In the last lesson, we dug into a few data points about how retention and engagement separates the top 1% products from the rest, literally the category leaders. And that's because retention and engagement is what powers acquisition and monetization, not the other way around. Retention and engagement is literally the power plant to everything else. So in this lesson, what we want to explore is how retention and engagement powers acquisition. We're going to go through 3 different reasons: how it drives our acquisition loops, how it builds acquisition competitive muscle, and how it can accelerate payback period. Let's dive into each one of these in a little bit more detail, starting with how retention drives our acquisition loops. If we took a look at companies like LinkedIn, Slack, Dropbox, and Instagram, they all have a powerful acquisition mechanism at the center of their growth model, the viral loop. A viral loop is simply as users sign up, a certain percentage invite friends, and a certain percentage of those invites, they click on those and redeem those invites to become new users, repeating the loop over and over again. So how does retention affect this viral acquisition loop? Well, let's take a look at a hypothetical scenario comparing scenario A with scenario B. In scenario A here, we have a single cohort of users going through a viral loop over 12 months. Retention levels off at about 25%. And as we play out these variables, at the end of month 12, we end up with 14,680 new users from virality. But let's take a look at a scenario B, where we're able to increase retention from 25% to 35% for this single cohort. Instead of ending on that 14,000 number, we end up with 18,240 users, almost a 4,000 user difference. And remember, this is a single cohort of users. If we were to play this out across all the cohorts throughout a year, the number of additional users acquired in 12 months through virality, just by increasing where retention flattens out by 10%, the difference is 23,280 new users. Pretty impactful. The reason why is that an increase in retention causes more viral touch points within a cohort. So we can think about a product like Dropbox. The longer I retain a user, the more viral touch points I am going to have, the more opportunities that user is going to share a file or a folder with the user going through that viral acquisition loop. In a similar way, the more users that I retain within a cohort, the more viral touch points I have across that entire user base of that cohort, creating more users from that viral acquisition loop. Let's take a look at a second different example. Let's take a look at companies like Houzz, Pinterest, Moz, and Yelp. One of the powerful acquisition loops that they have at the center of their model is a user-generated content loop. As a user signs up, a certain percentage create content, Google indexes that content, and then people find that content in the search engines, becoming new users, repeating the loop over and over again. Now, how would retention affect this type of acquisition loop? Well, an increase in retention is going to cause more content to be created and as a result indexed, which is going to create more new users from this content loop. So the greater percentage of users that I retain within a cohort gives me more opportunities that those users are going to create more content out of that cohort. So more is going to be indexed, which means more visitors from the search engines, which means more users. Let's take a look at another example. Things like Clash of Clans, Uber, SurveyMonkey, or Dollar Shave Club. All of them use a paid marketing loop to acquire a lot of different users. A user signs up, a certain percentage pay. That revenue from that payment is used to buy more ads. A certain percentage act on that ad, creating more users. An increase in retention causes faster reinvestment in the buying of more ad inventory within this loop. So the greater percentage of users that I retain, I'm going to earn more money from that cohort, which means I have more money that I'm able to reinvest back in this paid loop. Let's think about HubSpot, Zendesk, Box, or New Relic. We can think about a sales loop. A new customer signs up, we add sales reps. Those sales reps work the leads, creating more customers. An increase in retention causes faster reinvestment in the hiring of sales reps, which is going to produce more customers over time. Now, we're going to dive into these acquisition loops in a lot more detail in one of the future modules, but let's move on to the second reason of how retention engagement powers acquisition. The second reason is that retention builds acquisition competitive muscle. Let's take a look at another scenario, right? In this scenario, we have two different companies, Company A and Company B. In both situations, they have an LTV of $100, a target CAC of 25, so a 4-to-1 LTV CAC ratio, and a payback tolerance of 3 months. Now let's assume that Company B improves their retention. Company B, as a result of improving their retention, has increased their LTV from $100 to $120. So as a result, keeping that target LTV to CAC ratio the same, they're able to raise their target cost of customer acquisition from $25 to $30. They're able to spend more. And as a result, Company B is going to grow faster. They're going to be able to increase their paid bids on paid marketing channels, pushing out Company A. They might be able to afford new channels that were previously too expensive, but are now within their target CAC. They might be able to reinvest that money in more content marketers or other people to drive more acquisition. But as you can see here, an increase in retention is going to increase things like LTV, which is going to enable us to be able to spend more on cost of customer acquisition compared to our competitors and kind of muscle them out of the market. The third reason of how retention engagement powers acquisition is that retention accelerates payback period. So as retention improves, a cohort is going to return its cost of customer acquisition cost faster, accelerating payback period. And as a result, we're able to reinvest that money back in acquisition at a faster pace. So this is a very simple concept. If I took two different cohorts and one cohort retained a greater percentage of users, I'm going to get more money back at a faster pace from that cohort and then be able to reinvest that in acquisition at a faster pace. All right, so we know how retention engagement powers acquisition. It drives our acquisition loops. It helps us build acquisition competitive muscle. It also helps us accelerate payback period, which helps us reinvest in growth faster. In the next lesson, what we want to talk about is how retention and engagement powers the other component of our model, monetization.